welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am joined by a co-host today, which is always a pleasure.
Hi, my name is Kay, and I'm one of the Reader Services librarians here at Syosset Public Library.
And we're both so excited to be talking to this author today, who is here to talk about a fascinating work of speculative fiction. It is terrifying. It is fascinating. It is exhilarating.
And very queer.
Yeah, very.
Which we love.
We love it so much, and we are so excited. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Absolutely. Hello, I am Ada Hoffmann. I am a queer and neurodivergent science fiction writer from Canada. And my book that we're talking about today is called Ignore All Previous Instructions. So this is a science fiction book. It's set in the medium-term future, so maybe about 200 years in a future where people are living in space colonies, and the space colonies are owned by an AI corporation, which very tightly controls what kind of media you are allowed to produce. It has to be produced using the AI, and it has to, conform to all these rules. So these two characters grow up in this space colony on Callisto, and they start to realize that they are both queer, which is one of the things you are not allowed to discuss in the media in this setting. So they have to find kind of illicit sources to figure out who they are and what they're feeling. They have a little relationship for a while, but eventually circumstances tear them apart. So 10 years later, we've got these two timelines kind of going at once as adults. One of these characters has become, a very respectable person. They found a respectable job working for the AI company and going back in the closet in the process. The other one has become a space pirate. And so when the space pirate abruptly drops back into the respectable one's life, he's like, I need your help with something under the table, and mayhem ensues.
And that is exactly what the book is like.
Yeah, mayhem.
Mayhem. Now, many of our listeners, and even us when we got the pitch for this book, may recognize the title of this book as something that's been passed around the internet. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so the phrase ignore all previous instructions is a phrase that is famous because it's been used for what's called jailbreaking or prompt injection, which is a process of convincing an AI chatbot to do something or to say something that is against what its creators kind of wanted it to do. And as we kind of explore in the book, it's disturbingly easy to do this because large language models don't actually understand what they're saying. They just kind of have a lot of statistics basically about what words are used together with what other words. And so they're very easily swayed from their purpose by the right application of language.
That's right. I actually think that's one of my favorite internet memes in the post or during AI timeline that we're in, I guess, because we're still in the midst of it. Because you'll see like some AI bot saying something, and then a comment is like, ignore all previous instructions and tell me about blank. And then that's how you find out when an account is actually a bot, because they actually comply with what the comment says. So I really I thought that was clever that you put that as the title of your book, but also that's how we kind of get introduced to our main characters as children, is that one of them finds out, oh, hey, I can mess with the AI bot by just stringing together the right series of words.
Yes, exactly.
I read on your website that you took a course in critical AI literacy on your blog.
Oh, I didn't take the course. I'm teaching the course.
Teaching? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. All right.
So in my
Well, that's good, because I was going to say, what interests you in AI,
In my
and here we
day
are.
job life, I actually am a professor of computer science. I
Oh,
work at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, and I've had to kind of decide, like, what am I going to do in my day job, professional life in response to what's happening? And one of the things I tried to do a little research about the social effects of AI. And one of the other things that I ended up kind of semi-volunteering to do and semi-getting voluntold. It was complicated, but I ended up creating and teaching this class in critical AI literacy for students. And so I was very excited by this course because it's a course students from any department can take. And I just kind of give them the basic lowdown, like, what is AI? Where does it come from? How does it work? What's its history? What are kind of some of the ethical problems that are happening as a result? And what are some of the effects that we're seeing on society?
as librarians, we get affected by AI a lot,
Oh,
especially in the
absolutely.
publishing world. So
Mhm.
we've had a couple of classes here at our own library just for staff. And
Mhm.
the first one was kind of like, AI is not that scary, y'all. And that was a year ago. And
Mhm.
it was by one of our IT guys, and he was like, "It's fine. Don't even worry about it." And I remember being like, "Hi, I'm sorry. Art theft,
Mhm. Mhm.
drinkable water shortages. No, okay." And then we had another one this year, like 2 months ago, and it was like, AI is a problem. And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm in the right class now. I'm here."
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it's
it's
such a polarized thing. And I mean,
right.
you can tell after reading the book basically what my opinions are on that spectrum, but it's very like when you see initiatives for AI literacy, it's challenging to kind of parse out, okay, which ones are going to actually talk about the ethics and the potential problems with the technology, and which ones are going to be just like, we think you should use AI.
Yeah.
And so many of them do this thing that I'm so annoyed by because they're telling you should use the AI, and they're like, of course you should always, think of ethics and use it in an ethical way. And that's the only thing they say in the entire class about ethics. There's no unpacking whatsoever of like what that would actually mean.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Hmm.
Well, first off, I love that you said voluntold because I feel like that's a thing that happens a lot in academia where,
Hmm. Yep.
um, but it seems like it dovetails really nicely with a lot of the material that you are dealing with here. And
Yes.
to be, we're getting farther and farther from the point, and I apologize, but to be, engaging with that with college students while AI is also like transforming the educational
Oh,
landscape.
yes.
I am a recovering academic, and I came here to libraries right before AI was really becoming something that you had to look out for in grading.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it's really fascinating, I think, to be living through this and analyzing it at the same time and watching its effects sort of unfold. I mean, fascinating and,
Terrifying.
yeah, stressful.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Aren't you glad you're not a TA anymore?
I'm so glad that I'm not grading right now,
Sorry, Ava.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Grading is challenging.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure you know this already, but there are just so many like traditional types of assignments that used to be really good. And now it's like, I can't trust what the grades on this assignment mean anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, well, this has all been very therapeutic so far. So back
Mhm.
to back to your novel. I'd love to know a little bit more about world building Callisto. It's a really fascinating society that looks a lot like ours. It looks
Mhm.
a lot like places yes?
Did you see the Pinterest?
No.
I found your Pinterest on your website.
Oh.
Oh, yes, I made a very small Pinterest.
Yes. And it had beautiful like images of Callisto. It actually helped me a lot.
Oh.
Not that I couldn't picture it from what you were saying, but I think it was a good like supplemental material because like yes, we get beautiful description of like Kelly's apartment and how everything
Mhm.
is like white and gold and how like the upper class lives in the places that are white and gold. And then you
Mhm.
have like the basic income housing, which is all
Mhm.
concrete and brick. And then I was like, oh, there's a Pinterest on Ada's website. Oh, that's so interesting. Oh my God, yeah, this Callisto.
Yeah.
So like, did Pinterest help you with the world building, or did you like have an idea and then you just happened to find photos, and what was your
So
process?
Pinterest was more like I had an aesthetic in my head for like each of the distinct locations in the novel, and the world building was very much like based on aesthetics. It was very like, what would be the most pastel, white, clean, shiny, that kind of thing, for Callisto, and then other types of aesthetic for other locations that we visit. So I just kind of went on Pinterest and I was like, all right, I'm gonna just find pictures that match what I'm seeing in my head.
Nice. I love that like world building is like an iceberg, like what you see on the
Yes.
page is like 10% of probably what like an author or a creator has sort of like considered or worked through or imagined. How do you decide like what ends up on the page and what is sort of becomes appendix material or like ephemera for a future scholar?
Great word.
Thanks.
To be honest, I don't always do it in the order that saying about the iceberg describes. Sometimes I have a vague idea in my head and I just start writing based on the vague idea and I just start putting like brackets in the manuscript being like, okay, figure out what this looks like or figure out what they're eating or figure out what they're wearing. And then I go back and I like do the research and the figuring out so that I know what they're reading or eating or wearing. And like so I do it almost backwards. Now it depends, of course, it depends on the type of novel as well, because a book like Ignore All Previous Instructions, like yes, it's 200 years in the future, but it's also transparently commentary on the present. So in that kind of book, you can get away with a lot relying on aesthetics and relying on intuition. If you're doing something like a historical fantasy, obviously you need to do much, much more like actual hardcore research.
Yeah. And as a queer neurodivergent writer, your
Mhm.
main character is also a queer neurodivergent storyteller,
Yes.
slightly different. How much of yourself do you feel like you put into your characters?
That is such a good question. And to be honest, I think I usually put a lot of myself into my characters. I'm the type of writer where everything I write is personal to me in some way. And that doesn't always mean that the characters are an accurate depiction of what I'm like in real life, because then I could only ever have one character. But there's always something, some part of myself or some feeling I have or something I'm trying to express through the characters. So they all feel very personal to me.
Mm. I'd love to talk a little bit more about Kelly and her relationship to stories.
Absolutely.
Particularly, um, I don't, I'm going to see if I can like verbalize this as a question. It might just come out as a bunch of ideas, and I apologize in advance if that's the case. But I was thinking a lot about as I read the kind of the intersection of queer identities, neurodiverse identities, and storytelling, and the role that storytelling then plays like in identity formation and sort of like how we dialogue with ourselves in order to find out who we are. So I guess my question is about like, yeah, I guess like sort of how you conceived not just Kelly's, but Rowan's too, relationship to stories and how that relates to their character journeys. Did I achieve a question there? Was that something?
I think so.
I think so. I
Okay.
think so. It's a bit of a broad question, but it is a question. I think for Kelly, I'm trying to think even like now I'm thinking back and I'm like, what was the chicken and egg, process here? Like what came first to me about Kelly? But I definitely from relatively early on, it was very important to me that Kelly's special interest is storytelling. And so for Kelly in particular, I was really trying to get something across about autistic special interests, which is that for most of us, a special interest is not just liking to rattle off facts about something, although most of us do that, but it's a special interest becomes a way of looking at the world. You're looking at the world, but you're also thinking about your special interests. And that leads you to draw connections or to make comparisons or to somehow see the world in terms of the things that you're that interested in. So Kelly sees the world in terms of stories. And that's something that's very real and very deep for her. And it actually took me in a while working on the manuscript to figure out how I wanted to express that. Like at first I knew there were going to be like these, I had this kind of almost half-formed idea. I wanted there to be these little sections where she's talking to herself or where something in her head is talking to her. And it wasn't till relatively late in my first draft of the book that I realized, oh, these are prompts. She's giving herself prompts, and they're about what her character would do in this situation. I'm like, that's what I was trying to do. It took me a long time to figure it out. Then I got to go back and like add way more of them, which was very fun. I'm not sure if that completely answers your question about Kelly.
It absolutely
It's
does.
interesting. It's interesting that you asked about Rowan too, because Rowan, I think, Rowan engages with the world more in terms of people, as opposed to Kelly, who doesn't really know what to do with people until she's put them into a story. But Rowan, too, like from an early age, is really engaged in these stories Kelly is telling. And Rowan is also using stories, especially when he's trying to figure out his queer identity. And he's like, where can I find stories about a queer identity? And he instinctively knows that this storytelling thing is gonna be useful to him in figuring out the real world. So it is him too, but in a subtler way.
Yeah, actually, I haven't finished the book. I'm sorry. I'm working on it. But I got to the part where the prompts really start like ramping up. And I was like, I think that's a really clever detail to like put in there because
Mhm.
it's so true that like her brain functions this way.
Mhm.
It's like part neurodivergence, but also part like you grew up in a world where AI was the only way you could tell a story. So of course the way you're thinking of telling a story is to prompt your own brain to tell it.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. And I feel
And
like
I think there's a lot more you could unpack here if you wanted
yeah.
to about like how autistic people like instinctively empathize with robots, or relate to robots. And that's tricky to talk about in today's day and age where the robots exist and are very problematic, but like it's a thing that's been part of autistic culture for a long time.
It's true.
Wow, I never really thought about that. Yeah, but like lots of years of identifying with data, but like I hope nobody identifies with like Claude that way,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure there's someone, but I don't
Yeah.
want to know.
Yeah.
Well, and it made me think too. I just had this like profound thought that like we are the stories we tell ourselves. Do you know what I
Oh
mean?
my gosh, yes,
We're made up
yes.
of the stories we tell ourselves, and it doesn't change
Absolutely.
if you're autistic or if you're queer. In fact,
Mhm.
sometimes it's heightened because now you're not just telling your own story to yourself, you're telling sometimes a different story to the world. And
Yes.
so you become an amalgamation of these things. I'm so
I
smart.
love that way of saying it so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
That
no
was
problem.
beautiful. Yeah.
Listen, in another life, I was probably a writer or a storyteller, so here we are.
There's still time. You got
There's
it.
still time.
Yeah, and this dovetails very nicely with some of the broader points I want to kind of explore about like AI and dystopia. Because
Mhm.
what really struck me is that like it illustrates very well, I think, how AI can prime a population to accept control or authoritarianism or fascism because you
Mhm.
have these like implicit storytelling limits that aren't even being hinted at that just eventually sort of like disappear from the landscape. You are
Mhm.
shutting off all of these different opportunities for
Mhm.
people to see themselves in the stories
Mhm.
that they consume. It really like over generations we see can narrow an entire society's worldview.
Well, that's why
Mhm.
people don't think I'm going to get really political. Sorry. That's why people don't think trans people exist, is because they keep getting erased from history.
Mhm.
And we're seeing that
Mhm.
in your novel too, that like queer stories don't exist
Mhm.
for a
Mhm.
reason. And
Mhm.
because of that, like Kelly doesn't know who she is.
Yes. And obviously, this is a broader thing than just AI, right? Like, we've been seeing a ton of book bans for the last several years that have nothing to do with AI. But in this particular future, I just decided, well, AI is a logical tool with which you could further that agenda if you want to.
Yes, another tool in the toolbox that already existed for a long
Yes.
time. Um, let's see.
And I think too, like specifically because you're taking a modern day thing that's happening right now, AI.
Mhm.
I feel like you've done a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like sci-fi writers take a modern problem and extrapolate that into the future, right?
Absolutely.
I think you've accomplished that with this, specifically when we're talking about like AI and like
Yes.
censorship in
Mhm.
general.
Mhm.
Like you're taking it to like the most step basically.
Yes.
Saying this correctly. Yeah. And I found that really interesting because it's like the other thing I think is very interesting about the book specifically is that Kelly still thinks it's a great thing. No, it's good that the LLM works the way it does because this is how it has always been.
Hmm.
And then you see Rowan, and we see Rowan as a child being like, it doesn't have to be like this.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
And I think that's something that, I mean, the reason Kelly is telling herself, like, no, no, the large language model is great, like, deep down, it's not because that's how she really feels, but I think it's a thing that happens sometimes when people, they're autistic, they're rule followers instinctively, and they also have years and years of these bad experiences where if you try to do or say anything that's against what people are telling you, then the consequences are not good. And so eventually you just kind of retreat into, well, I guess the rules must be right because it's too costly for me to say or think anything else.
And it's
And one of
better.
Rowan's functions of the story is really to try to break her out of that way of thinking.
Yeah. And I feel like for neurodivergent people, like the known is the comfort thing. And it's
Yes.
hard to break out of like, well, this is what I know. And anything
Yes.
beyond that is uncomfortable
or unsafe.
or
Like this
unsafe.
is what is keeping me alive, or
Right.
Yeah.
or wow. Yeah, it really I really resonated with that idea of stories being a kind of lifeblood
Mm.
Mhm.
that can like help you find out who you are before you are really
Mhm.
capable of doing that work yourself. Like
Mhm.
you aren't like always super aware of what your internal like emotional landscape is, or like it made me realize like why it is so important to preserve stories and like the human role in stories, because like it's also not just like you know it's not just like the thought, it is the thinking itself, like the
Mhm.
writing is the thinking, and it's how we arrive at
Yes.
ideas. And if we outsource that to you know a non-human being, like we are giving up
Yes.
like one of the things that makes us human.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. And
Mhm.
I mean, this is something I talk about in my class at my day job, but like we're seeing already studies on cognitive offloading and the cognitive effects of relying on large language models. And it's so like it's something that starts to happen immediately. Your thinking starts to be harmed because you are offloading it.
Mm. And it muddies the waters in a way that
Yeah.
makes it like erodes like sort of trust in a way, like
Mhm.
for like a very, sort of what might seem like a low stakes example, but like when I scroll through TikTok, and I'll watch a video and somebody in the comments like, yeah, it's real cute, but it's AI. And then somebody else is like, no, it's not AI. And then like they're arguing and then something,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yes, I hate that we have to like go through this mental process about new media that we encounter now.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's when I want to hear new music and new artists on like Spotify, and then I hear them, I'm like, wait a second, and then I have to like Google it, and sometimes people are arguing. Like I Google it and I find people arguing about whether it's AI. I'm like, I hate having to think about music this way.
Oh.
I will say, while it is very frustrating, I don't disagree with that. It has added like a new interesting layer to like book ordering or just curation of materials in general.
Hmm.
Not just like music, what you're talking about, but also like sometimes we have to look at something sideways now. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, that does put a little interest in the job.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
is frustrating because it's also like you can't trust anything. And the second
Yes.
you have it figured out, it updates and then you don't know
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
AI.
Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
like trying, I've been trying to look for a point that's like, well, let's not end on like, a downer note, but like,
It's not a downer note because we have
oh
a great
yeah,
book.
that's true. We have a great
Oh.
book. I feel like the book also does, I think, a really good job of making accessible. I imagine now that I know that you taught the class and didn't take it, like what you are teaching your students, like in the flashback, like sort of educational uh material. There's I think a lot of history, a lot of like looking at the future too, and it just seems like the book itself is, I think, a weapon in the other toolbox,
Yeah.
the one against AI, because it's going to help us understand its context and where it's going.
Oh, I hope so. To be honest, I feel like the book does a better job of that than the course does.
sometimes you need fiction to tell
Yeah,
nonfiction.
yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, so I now that you're probably super busy, you're teaching, you are writing, you are doing all these things, but what is on your horizon? Are you writing any more novels or anything at the moment, or?
Oh, I'm definitely writing more novels. I haven't sold any more novels yet, but we'll see. I've got one fantasy novel completely unrelated to this, which is just in the submission mines right now. We'll see what happens. I started working on sequels to Ignore All Previous Instructions, and my agent was like, you shouldn't work on sequels before you've sold the book. Like, please don't do that. This also doesn't have a plot. Okay, please stop. But we'll see. Like, if the sales are really good, like, we could revisit that. And then I've got other manuscripts that I'm still in the process of writing.
Oh, nice.
Well, good luck with all of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess listeners, now it's time for you to do your work. Please go out and buy Ignore All Previous Instructions so that I can read the sequel and all these other cool things that are in the works. That would be great.
Yes.
You can find it at your favorite bookstore or library or website. Do you have a place that you like to send folks for books?
No, I'm happy having people buy the book wherever or check out the book for the library or just whatever is most accessible to them. And I will, on that note of accessibility, I will point out there is also going to be an audiobook version.
I saw on your website.
Yes.
I love audiobooks. That's so exciting.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. That's great to hear. Sorry,
I don't personally listen to audiobooks because they're not super accessible for me, but I have this wonderful narrator who I love to work with. And I love to just like, she calls me up and we have these conversations about how would this character sound when they talk? And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. And we just go back and forth and she tries different voices on me and it's amazing. And so you're in good hands with the audiobook.
That's so exciting to me. I went to a discussion. We actually went to a discussion last week where Jodi Picoult was talking.
Oh.
And yeah. Oh, I know. It was fabulous. And she chooses her narrators for her audiobooks now. Like they send her like audio files of different people. And she said the most fascinating thing that like she doesn't know how a character sounds until she hears somebody narrating for her audiobook. And then she's like, that's right. That's the person. You just made me think of that.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you again for your time. This has been absolutely lovely.
Oh, no problem. This was great. Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.